Hello. Most of us remember our first teenage relationships. They can be exciting, confusing, exhilarating, sometimes heartbreaking. They're an important part of growing up. Sadly, though, police are seeing more instances of young people coming forward to report relationships marked by coercive control and assault. When Anna Coutts-Trotter first told her mother, the Federal Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek, what was going on in her relationship, it was the beginning of both the family's biggest test and a passionate new cause for Anna.
Wow, it's so prof. Brenda, come look at how professional we are. Take it all in. The last few years have definitely been a bit of a juggle. I'm most excited about the food. But even though it's really hard and it can be really re-traumatising, I want to be able to use my voice to make changes. I still have like 10 more to write, but not for tonight. Not the night.
Erin's got presents with us.
Another hamper.
Anna is incredibly motivated. She's great at motivating the team. She's great at getting things done. She's great at helping people.
Thanks for coming.
Anna wants to ensure that not one more person experiences even a tenth of what she had to.
That's all right. Yeah. Just do ankles up.
Yes, you're going.
Anna has taken something chaotic and hurtful and meaningless and terrible for her.
Hello, darling.
And turned it into something positive and remarkable. But for that, this whole thing, I think, would have fractured our family. But because of that, it has deepened the love we feel for each other.
She told me some of the things that had been happening to her in the relationship. I mean, honestly, I wanted to kill him for hurting my child.
It's no surprise it could happen to our daughter. It can happen to anyone.
You see what a good cook you are.
Thank you.
Would be good if you come every day and cook for me.
The last few years have been really tough on my family and they've been really, really supportive.
Is that fair enough?
And you're going to put some oil on your fingers. I'm very, very close with my family, particularly my brothers and my parents.
Anna, this is enough now. We put a little bit of oil and do with your fingers, okay?
My grandmother on my mum's side, we still go and visit her very regularly. She loves to cook. It looks good watching you do it, Bar.
Michael and I both really value having those close family relationships. And if you can cut a little bit off the end, that will keep them fresh longer. No, not that much, just like about 2 centimetres. Perfect.
No, I should put some oil, not oil, not some
Undo it again.
You are.
No, that's fine.
Are you giving Bar some direction on her strudel, Dad?
Oh, isn't that clever?
Both of us work pretty long hours. I'm away from home quite a lot of the year, but we try and make sure that there are normal things for the kids to look forward to. I think I've got a close relationship with all 3 of the kids. Anna and I are very close. There you go.
When I was younger, I loved to go to work with Mum. When I went to my first protest, I was younger than a year old.
Tanya was extraordinary. She took all 3 kids with her to Canberra.
Yes. Oh, terrific. Very excited about the new role. Yes.
Your Excellency, I present the Honourable Tanya Joan Plibersek MP to be Minister for Human Services and Minister for Social Inclusion.
My parents have always instilled a sense of social justice principles in me from a very young age, and I've always been really aware of the world around me and the people in it.
Could we get a photo with your family, if that's okay? It's still nice and close.
We've raised our kids, I hope, to be thoughtful, independent-minded, kind, and I think Anna has that absolutely in spades.
I
I was Anna's teacher in high school for 6 years. Anna had a really strong sense always of social justice. She was actually awarded not only a Principal's Award but a Department of Education Award in recognition of her service at a local aged care facility. She almost single-handedly ran an International Women's Day at the school.
I loved being at high school. When I started year 10, everything was going really well for me. And towards the end of the year, I started my first teenage relationship. He was in another year at a different school. The beginning of the relationship was great. I felt loved. I felt as though he cared about me.
It didn't seem there was anything unusual or remarkable about it. The boy seemed unremarkable. There was nothing that really signalled great danger.
It was exactly what I thought relationships were at that age. When we weren't texting, we were calling or FaceTiming. I shared my location with him on my phone. So when I wasn't with him in person, I was still constantly available to him.
At first, I didn't really think much of it, but as things went on, sometimes she'd panic if she realised she'd gone more than a couple of hours without messaging him or letting him know what was happening. And there was almost a fear of what would happen if she didn't check in.
I spent a lot of time at his house. It became normal for me that I needed to ask him for permission to do things that I wanted to do or see people I wanted to see.
A very broad, very social life became much narrower until finally she was really only socialising with one person.
When my parents would sort of push back and they would say, I'm worried about you, I'm worried about, this relationship that you're in, I would spend more time with him.
She'd gone from being very close with us to more distant, more secretive. I don't think I really understood what she was going through, and she certainly didn't tell me the details of what she was going through. She told me she was unhappy.
I was experiencing violence in the relationship that I was in, but I didn't want to worry my parents. I thought that I had some kind of control over the situation. I thought that, this was a temporary thing that would get better and everything would be okay, and I didn't want to upset them. When I looked at my peers, what I saw was what I was experiencing very often, and so I kind of just thought, maybe this is what teenage relationships are like.
Anna's story is definitely not uncommon. You notice a culture around some young men of feeling like they have a right to treat women in that sort of way. I would make it very clear my views on the relationship and how unhealthy it seemed, and sort of tried to steer her in the direction of ending it. It really destroyed her self-confidence and her sense of self-worth.
I told myself that I wasn't worthy because he told me I wasn't worthy. I started to control the way that I was eating because I thought I could control the way I looked because that's what he was telling me about myself. School was an escape for me, but there were also times in school where I became really distressed.
With Anna, I noticed a change in her demeanour. She withdrew a little bit in the classroom. There was one occasion when I noticed her very upset. I asked her what was wrong. She sort of brushed it off a little bit, as teenagers often do, and said that she was having some boy problems, but it was nothing,
As things went on, it definitely got a lot more tumultuous. I distinctly remember one evening her telling me about how aggressive he could be.
I experienced every kind of abuse imaginable. The abuse became worse and it became more physical, and there was a time towards the end of the relationship where I knew that I needed to leave him. I wanted to tell Mum and Dad what had happened and what I'd experienced, and I didn't know how to tell them. I didn't know exactly what I wanted them to know.
It really wasn't until she and I were at dinner one night, just the two of us, that she told me some of the things that had been happening to her. She was worried about my reaction. She was worried about her father's reaction. I remember being shocked when she started to describe to me some of the things that had happened in the relationship. I probably kept some of how I was feeling from her because I didn't want her to be worried about upsetting me.
I had a period, Tanya had a period of just asking ourselves, what did we miss? What were the signs? What should we have picked up on? There were a collection of things in retrospect that seem a lot more sinister now than they seemed at the time.
I worked in domestic violence before I went into Parliament. Every experience of abuse is different, but there are some real common threads. He deliberately isolated her from her friends and from her family. He made her excuse his behaviour. He made it her responsibility how he behaved. And I think that's clearly what was happening here. Anna was making excuses for the behaviour. She was making excuses for the bruising I saw on her. I think that makes her typical of most people who have a similar experience.
As a parent, you want to protect your children. And as a father particularly, you want to protect your daughter. The feeling of a parent to hear from their child that they've been terribly hurt by somebody else, you just have an immense feeling of anger, of regret, and inevitably a feeling of failure as a parent, that there is something that is a profound responsibility of a parent to a child, which is to give them a safe home in which to grow up. And it proved not to be a safe home. Sometimes, he hurt her here. So, yeah, it was a terrible experience.
Both Mum and Dad had said to me, how can we show up for you? How can we support you? I never felt as though they didn't understand. There was the question of whether or not I might report to the police, and I was really concerned that they wouldn't believe me. But I did end up speaking to the police, and the police were really helpful in helping me identify what I'd experienced.
How's that job working itself up?
Been a detective with the New South Wales Police for over 20 years.
Really appreciate it, thanks.
Police are increasingly seeing instances of domestic and sexual abuse in the context of teen relationships. Young people are increasingly being exposed to adult concepts at an earlier age. We know that domestic, family and sexual violence is underreported as a crime type generally, and it's even more so the case when we're dealing with younger persons.
I think that because I was so young, it was really hard for me to identify with the idea of it being domestic violence. When I thought of domestic violence, like many other people, I thought about marriages, I thought about mortgages, I thought about children, I thought about people who were a lot older than me.
One of the greatest challenges they face is speaking up. We certainly encourage those survivors that want to make a complaint to do so, but the decision to engage with the criminal justice system is a significant one, and to some extent involves jumping into the unknown.
Even though I was still terrified and really uncertain of what it would look like, I did still decide to report and go to court.
I thought it was an incredibly courageous thing to do, and I know that her whole motivation was to stop him hurting other people.
The lead up to court was horrible. It wasn't only hard for me, it was also really hard for my family, and it was causing a lot of distress in my family, particularly to my parents. It was the first time that I'd seen my dad cry.
It was an incredibly complex emotional experience for her. And so we worried a lot that she would feel this responsibility for the feelings in the whole family. And that anger, that pain, that sadness It's not her responsibility, it was the responsibility of the person who hurt her.
For this long period of time while I was waiting for court to start,
Good girl.
the police had told me very clearly that I wasn't allowed to have conversations with my family and friends who may be called as witnesses.
And so we're living in the one house but not able to discuss this enormous thing that's happening for our child. And knowing, you know, that somewhere someone is coaching the defendant, it's an isolating and unequal relationship.
I felt like I had nobody who understood what I was going through. I felt completely alone in the process. This huge thing is happening to me and I don't know what to expect and I don't know how I'm going to survive it.
If you can find good things in this whole experience. One of the best things that happened for Anna was she met another young woman called Beck.
A couple of days before court started, I went to court and I really wanted to familiarise myself with what it would look like. I wanted to know, where will he be sitting? Where would I be sitting?
I was sitting outside my courtroom as the court was taking place for the trial against my perpetrator, and I noticed another younger girl sitting also outside the courtroom, which was unusual that there was someone else hanging around. So she was very anxious and she began to ask me questions about the experience that I'd had up until this point.
Beck and I spoke for a few hours about what to expect in the court process, but she also spent so much time just supporting me and telling me that she knew exactly how it felt to be sitting there in my position. I felt like she knew me at that time the best that anybody in my life knew me.
I think our conversations and our solidarity gave her the courage to be able to walk through what she was about to walk through.
On the first day of the trial, Anna was incredibly nervous and Tanya and I were deeply worried about what the experience would be like. The irony was that the job I held at that time gave me, as the head of the Department of Communities and Justice, administrative responsibility for supporting the court system. So I thought I knew about it, but the experience of it is immensely frustrating on occasions. It feels like it's not a fair fight.
I think if I had known how incredibly difficult the process would have been, I would have begged her not to do it. It's excoriating. It's, I mean, I gave evidence for 3 hours and I came home and was shattered for the rest of the day. It was emotionally exhausting in a way that took a toll physically. I've never experienced anything like that before. She gave evidence for 3 days. I don't know how she did it.
I felt as though I was on trial. I felt as though everything I'd done, all the ways that I'd responded that were natural to me and natural to many other survivors, were being used against me. The fact that I hadn't told people straight away, the way I maintained contact with him, they were all used against me.
I honestly couldn't believe that, you know, in this day and age, there were still questions about what she was wearing and how she was behaving, what she'd had to drink. The implication that she was lying, the implication that she had something to gain from this horrific experience of going to court.
I understand the process and I understand why it is the way it is, but it feels, from the side of the person who is making the complaint, who is the victim survivor and their family, that you're playing by the rules. And it's important, the rules matter. And the prosecution is there to uphold the law. But the defence is there to use anything and everything to discredit the character, the truthfulness, the believability of someone you love and you know is a person of honesty and integrity.
I was at home when I heard the verdicts, and I immediately called my parents, and they were both home within 15 minutes, and I was in my bed incredibly distressed, and they both jumped into bed with me and just held me, and I just cried for a really long time.
Maybe it's unrealistic to expect a court result to somehow put things right. But there is this sense of satisfaction that there is consequence for the person who's hurt someone you love, and that is something that will stick with them through life, and that will be known about them.
I was at university while I went through trial, and I'm studying a Bachelor of Arts in Social Work, and I decided to study some criminology classes.
I was teaching a class in criminology. It was about society and punishment, so, yeah, punishment in the legal system.
So I was concerned that maybe some of the content in the class could be a bit distressing or even just uncomfortable for me.
She sent me an email just to let me know that she's a survivor. It gave me the opportunity to also then sort of reach out to her and say, hey, actually, I completely get it, I understand, because me too.
How are you going? Good, how are you?
We organised a meet one day just because we wanted to sort of connect.
Yeah, I've got one more essay to go and then I'll be done. That's exciting. Yeah.
I'd been through this horrendous experience, being a survivor, being through the court system.
I thought that class was really good because I felt like it was a really human perspective of people's experiences of crime. So Brenda and I had this instant connection where we could talk about what we'd experienced and what we had in common and what had differed.
Both Anna and I, we both wanted to turn our experiences into something positive to be able to help other people, because we also knew the value of that help and support.
We were talking in that conversation about supporting people through the court process and supporting survivors in general. And around that time, I also connected with others, and together we formed the Survivor Hub. Hey!
Hey, how are you?
The way you walked in.
I know, Justin. How are you?
Good, how are you? Thanks for coming. Thank you for coming. And so what we do is we run meetups, which are peer support groups, and they're open to all survivors older than 16 years old. And in meetups, survivors can talk about anything. Have you got some toys in your meetups? Not yet.
Do make a bad choice. For some survivors, it'll be the first time they've really sat in the same room as another survivor.
So thanks, everybody, for coming to this meetup. My name's Anna, and I'll be facilitating the meetup.
Hi, everyone. My name's Harry.
Hi, Harry.
I went to my first Survivor Hub meeting about 2 years ago now. Being a man, I remember thinking, am I even allowed to be here right now? What if no one likes me? But as soon as I walked in and decided to take that chance, it was just a feeling of being understood. And I think if you're in this cold, dark room with this professional that has no empathy towards you, it's just not the same. But coming into a room of people that have that lived experience and know exactly what you're talking about, that's like striking gold. You can't replicate that. Yeah. I remember going to counsellor after counsellor after counsellor, therapist, psychologist, whatever it was, and just feeling like it was so clinical.
It's like the first counsellor I saw, I told them what happened and like how I was feeling, and she suggested like I went on a run, and I was like, yeah, no, it's not really for me. And then I was like, so therapy doesn't work for me. And then I didn't go back for like another 6 or so months until I worked out that like, there's like services for me.
With every survivor I come across, they articulate something that I've been trying to say for years and years and years.
Like, I really invalidated myself because of my age as well. So I was like, oh no, like those services aren't for me. And also like Oh, am I taking up space from other survivors? Some people would be surprised if they haven't been to a meetup before to know how joyful it is to be in a meetup.
Could be 6 to 12 months between dates.
Then you lose interest.
We have just had an overwhelming response. Over the past 12 months, we've had more than 800 people register for our meetups.
Sometimes you go through the court process and the defence attorneys end up being the ones that you have more nightmares about than the actual perpetrator.
That's so often, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's nice when you find someone who is cross-examined by the same
and
same defendant. At the moment, it's Brenda and I that run the Survivor Hub together full-time. We do it on a volunteer basis, and we have some incredible volunteers who support us. Thank you.
But we've really overstretched. So last year, in the attempt to raise funds, we held a second birthday party.
I've added them in the bottom of this picture. And the goal of the fundraiser was to really raise some money so that we can fund our existing meetup locations, but also because we have some new locations opening.
Yeah, I really liked it. Some red wine. Yeah. Some more red. Rush over and say hello. Yeah, that was a great event. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Same thing.
I've organised a few events myself, and I just appreciated the hustle of it, actually putting that together.
One of our co-founders and directors' mothers, so...
I want to say how amazing it is to be here tonight. I want to acknowledge the co-founders, Brenda, Gemma, Erin and my little baby Anna. And
I know it meant a lot to Anna to have her mum speak at the fundraiser.
There's nothing harder for a parent to hear that your child has been hurt, sometime more than once. It affects a whole family, siblings, family, friends, grandparents.
Anna's mum spoke really beautifully about the impact of supporting a survivor.
Well, the thing I know helped me was talking to other parents. The thing that I saw helped Anna the most was talking to other survivors. I feel like the best thing I can do is help my daughter help herself and help other people.
Thanks, Mum.
We didn't stop her being hurt, but it looks like we've given her some of the qualities that she needs to get through it. And, you know, that's of some comfort.
Thank you. Thanks for taking it.
Hey, congrats.
In some ways, this has probably brought us closer together as a family. There is no way that I would have been able to go through it without their support. I'm in my final year of university and I'm doing my final placement in Broken Hill, working predominantly with survivors. I'll also be there co-facilitating the Survivor Hub meetups, which we only established a few months ago. It's about a 13-hour drive.
I expect that she'll end up working in the area of sexual assault or domestic violence as a social worker. I worry sometimes that it's such a big part of her life. I feel like at 23 she should be able to be more carefree than she is. But however much I worry as a mother, as a woman, I admire what she's doing.
In the future, whatever role I end up in, I'll always be in a role where I'm working with people, supporting people, and I hope that I can stay working with survivors for the rest of my career or for a very, very long time.
My hope is that she continues to recover from this, and my hope is that as her life gets larger and larger and fuller, this bit of it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller until, yes, it happened. Yes, much good has come from it, but it's just one element of a rich